Boys and girls, ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Clutch Conversations. It's your boy Mike. We back at you one more again, live on a Thursday night. It's going down in the Clutch tonight. We got Peter Williams in the building. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. Definitely looking forward to this conversation. But first and foremost, man, before we get to the show, big shout out to my lovely wife, Takara. Make sure y'all show us some love in the comments. Show us some love, man. Definitely appreciate all of her support, everything that she does for us. Definitely appreciate her holding us down. Definitely, like I said, man, looking forward to the show. But before we get to the show, we got some housekeeping items we got to take care of real quick. Like, first of all, make sure you're following us on Morph Market. If you're not already following us, we've been running a couple auctions here lately. Also got a bunch of snakes posted. So definitely go check us out on Morph Market. Give us a follow. If you see something you like, reach out, holla at us, man. Closed mouth don't get fed, man. If you see something you like, let's talk, man. We can work something out. Check us out on IG, Instagram, Herp Collectors page, Herp Collectors Network page. Make sure you follow in both pages to keep up with everything we're doing. Follow us on Facebook as well, also at Herp Collectors, and definitely check us out on all major podcasting platforms. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and more. Definitely check us out. And not only check out Clutch Conversations, but also check out the whole Herp Collectors Network catalog. All the shows are available on major podcasting platforms. And also check out the website, clutchconversations.com. That's where we drop our blogs at. We got all the episodes uploaded there. Definitely be having announcements and stuff like that. So definitely check out the website if you have not already checked it out. We definitely appreciate the love and support. Speaking of support, make sure you support both US Art and US Art Florida. The link for both organizations is in the description of the video. But definitely, man, help these organizations that are helping us. They're helping protect our rights as reptile keepers. So make sure you show us some love. Make sure you show us some support. Get you a membership, drop a donation, and definitely spread the word, man. Everybody in the reptile industry need to be supporting US Art and US Art Florida in some shape, form, or fashion. Coming up, we're not that far away, y'all. February 15th and 16th is going down in Atlanta, Georgia. Is the second coming of the Southeast Reptile Expo. Gonna be a lot of fun, man. Definitely looking forward to it, man. It's gonna be some dope vendors, including myself, yours truly, gonna be in the building, vending and podcasting. And then we got all kinds of other dope vendors as well. We got Adeline Robinson Art. We got the homie Jason from Ancestral Royal Pythons, the homie Justin from Armless Angels Ball Pythons, Ball Python Shed, Balls and Strikes. We got a ton of people that's gonna be in the building. Myself, Jason from Ancestral Royals, Justin from Armless Angels Ball Pythons, and then the homie Unc from Whittemore Constrictors. We're gonna have a end cap. We're gonna be vending together. It's gonna be a lot of fun, man. So definitely come check us out. And like I said, also doing the podcast from the show. Definitely looking forward to that. If you're not in the Double Clutch Patreon, don't know what you're waiting on, definitely join the Double Clutch Patreon. It's been growing, man, having a lot of fun. To be honest, the Zoom calls is my favorite part, man. We just get to kick it and talk snakes, talk business, have a lot of fun, man. So definitely, if you're not tapped in for the Double Clutch Patreon, make sure you get tapped in, man. It's a lot of fun. This week, we got Chondro Corner with Jen, one half of the Chondro Corner duo. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. Every Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. She got the homie Jason coming in the building, man. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. He's going to tell us about kind of his journey into getting into breeding chondros. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Definitely looking forward to it. Make sure you tap in. And then also this Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is episode 1 of Grow House, hosted by Veronica from Ivy Plants and Palm Street. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. Definitely looking forward to getting some plant folks over to the channel, man. Maybe we can convince them to come over to the reptile world. But it's gonna be a lot of fun. We got Royal Roots Company for episode 1. So definitely set those reminders. Gonna be a lot of fun, man. Definitely looking forward to this show. It's gonna be a lot of fun, like I said. And we're gonna pay some bills real quick, then we'll be right back. Are you a ball python keeper, hobbyist, or breeder looking for a place to deep dive into the ball python industry and learn what you need to know to be successful, whether as a hobby or a business? Then look no further. The KINOVA Patreon is the place for you. Join KINOVA's Patreon today and unlock hundreds of hours of exclusive educational content designed to elevate your game. Learn directly from the world's leading ball python designer. And hey, here's some free game. For starters, I'd recommend joining the student tier, a tier that includes a ton of perks as well as a 5% discount on all animals. So elevate your game. Join the KINOVA Patreon today. Art comes in many forms. At Armless Angels, it comes to life. In life, success doesn't come to you. You go to it. In this game, forward thinking is the key to innovation and staying relevant. Plan your work and work your plan. Lose yourself in the art. Lose yourself with wetter morphs. Big shout out to the sponsors, man. Appreciate you. Let's see who we got in the chat tonight. We got Shauna Connor in the building, the Sultaness of Support. Appreciate you coming out. Double Clutch Patreon member, the homie Vinny, Bone Daddy, Serpents in the building. What's good? We got Lucky's Pythons in the building. What's good? We got the homie Wiz in the building again. Whiskey Bomb Network, Double Clutch Patreon member. Appreciate you coming out, homie. Speaking of the Whiskey Bomb Network, we got the homie T Keys in the building. What's good, homie? Appreciate you coming out. Dylan, what's good? Dizzy Reptiles in the building. Appreciate you coming out, checking out the show. Double Clutch Patreon member in the building. Eric, what's good? EA Snakes in the building. We got Mark and Tiff in the building. Appreciate y'all coming out. Don Bala in the house. Another Double Clutch Patreon member. The homie, also a sponsor. Jason, what's good? Ancestral Royal Pythons. We got the guest Double Dipping in the building. Appreciate you, homie. Python Susie, what's up? Appreciate you coming out. Daniel Berry, what's good? Appreciate you coming out, fam. Dwight the Pie Man, what's good? Appreciate you coming out. Always good to see you slide through the chats. Courtney, what's good? Appreciate you coming out. B Lock, what's good? Good evening to you as well. And then we also got the homie John from Mission Morphs in the building. What's good? And we're gonna stop it right there. We're gonna kick this intro, and then we'll be right back with the show in just a few minutes.
Baby, won't you listen to me? I got that flavor, I know you're dying to feed. I ain't no dancer, just got some hip in my feet. Now throw your hands up. Ooh, you bring the lighter, I got the fuse. You make a fire, I'll add the fuel. Follow my lead, just watch your shoes. Gotta turn the heat up. This cool. Who you know who looking like this for real? Who you know who looking like this? Who you know who looking like this for real? Who you know who looking like this? Who you know who looking like this for real? Who you know who looking like this? Who you know who looking like this for real? Who you know who looking like this?
This is episode 160, y'all. Peter Williams Reptiles in the building. What's up? What's up? What's up, bro? How's it going?
Oh, not too bad. Good to be back, man.
Yeah, it's good to have you back, man. I appreciate you coming on.
For sure. Excited.
Yeah, I gotta ask, man. I wanted to ask backstage, but I figured I would save it to the show. So tell us a little bit about the background, the aliens and whatnot.
Oh, what? This guy? That's another hobby of mine. I don't know if you've seen what has been going on in that arena in the last like 6-7 years, but it's not the same old, for the last like 80 years people have been saying they've been seeing flying saucers and whatnot, but for the last half decade it's gotten pretty serious, so I've gotten pretty into it. So just a little decoration here for now that I'm in my new snake building here, I can put stuff up like this on the wall and not get in trouble with the wife. Right?
Happy wife, happy life. Yeah, man. I saw I think it was was it last year or was it the year before, but it was recently that the guy testified on the oath and was saying about the UFOs and stuff like that, or maybe they called it UFA or something. It's a new one. UAP.
Unidentified anomalous phenomenon is what they call it.
There you go. Yeah.
You're talking about David Grush is the guy you're talking about, military intelligence whistleblower. Yeah, so it has been getting pretty serious. I've always been under the mindset that there's no way that it's just us. I mean, the universe is too big. That's where if I won't go down my alien tangent right now, but that's where I usually start with people when I do go down the tangent, is you can at least get through to most people that have an understanding of how big the universe is and stuff like that. You can get most people to agree that there is likely other intelligent life out there. Where people disagree is whether or not it's come here to Earth to visit us, which to me the evidence points to that, but everybody else doesn't see it that way yet. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of years.
Yeah, man, it's crazy, man. I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast, and I forget who the guest was, but it was pretty recent, and he was talking with the guy about stuff like this, and they was talking about why they tried to keep it under wraps for so long. But when you think about it, from their perspective, from the government's perspective, how does it behoove them to be hey, there is another intelligent life form out here. They might be more powerful than us. Likely they are more powerful than us, and we can't do anything about it.
And that's the crux of the whole thing, right? Is if they figured this out, let's say, which I'm pretty sure it was, Roswell was real crash. If they knew then in 1947 and oh wow, and then have been trying to analyze and reverse engineer the technology since then, how does a government, that's the main feature, or the main thing a government does is protect its people, right, from whatever enemy. And if no government of on Earth could say that we can protect you from this, then they'd rather just not say. Right? So it's probably what's going on.
Right, it's let's just make movies about it and make money off of it. And reverse engineer the tech and make money off
exactly. Or maybe the movies are slowly warming people up to the idea, that kind of thing, right? So
a little bit of both.
But, exactly.
AI making strides and breakthroughs in quantum computing. We almost in the MCU, man. Just a few more decades.
That's the unfortunate thing with the AI stuff for this topic, the UFO stuff, is there's so many videos out there of flying saucers or beings or whatever, and for the last 20 years, if a video were to come forward, people could at least honestly analyze it. But now any video, if it's like, let's say it's a real video, and people would always just say it's AI. Even
I see that a lot now.
if you guys have a new president now, if he has a press conference tomorrow and does the speech, like, my fellow Americans, and then lets it all out, people wouldn't believe that. They would say that's AI. And then, God forbid, the government actually releases photos and videos of craft and beings and stuff like that. No, like, we learned that through COVID, that there's a large portion of the population that just won't believe it if it doesn't jive with their worldview that they subscribe to now. They just would bury their head in the sand and just say, oh, that's AI, that's fake, and they just won't believe it. Right.
Yeah, like I see that a lot now on social media, like where like certain videos or pictures and stuff, people automatically just jump to that's AI. And sometimes it is AI, but sometimes it's not necessarily AI. But now it's just like embedded in people's minds to say that's AI, that's AI. It's crazy, man. Definitely a very interesting time. What a time to be alive. But I know everybody want to hear about snakes and stuff, man. So definitely give us some updates on what's going on with you in the snake world.
So the last time I was on the show, I was right on my snake building, my dedicated facility that I've had under construction for way too long. I think, right on the cusp of moving into the building, and that's all done now. I'm sitting in the building right now. Right across from me is my wall of ARS racks with all my breeders and stuff. And had a good season this past season, and been doing lots of pairing for the 2025 hatching season, and just got my first ovulation here in the new building. And it was a lot of work to move everything in here, and but it's working out. I have so much more, I still haven't really posted any videos of the inside of the building, which I really should do, but I have way more room than I used to have. And to know that I added like one rack compared to what I had previously in my tiny little farmhouse, but it's like shocking anybody to walk in this building now and see how I have it set up. And then if I were to take them in my house and be like, yeah, this is where it all was like 6 months ago, you wouldn't believe it. And it was so crammed in there, and I had so not enough room to work properly, but I do now. So it's like going into this new season is awesome, because it's just everything just feels easier, in terms of cleaning and feeding and pairing. And it's awesome. I love it, man. This was the dream since year 6 months into this hobby, when I started in 2006, which at that time I was 16 years old. I'm 34 now. This was the dream, was to have the dedicated building, and it was a lot of hard work, man. And now here I am sitting in it. It's awesome.
Nice, bro. That's what's up. So talk about like the process of getting your new building. I noticed you spoke about like space considerations and stuff like that. Like, was there, like, at what point did you kind of say, all right, enough is enough, I got to get out of this small space? And then talk about like the process of getting in your new building, kind of like challenges and all that kind of stuff, the logistics.
Yeah, for sure. So when I started the hobby back in 2006, I was still living at my parents' house and stuff like that, and in the middle of the suburbs. And I had basically taken over their entire basement, a finished basement rec room kind of, and I had lots of space back then. And then, got older, getting close to that time when it's time to move out of the house. meet a girl who's now my wife. And so then we had to get a place together. And I knew, because I wanted to start this feeder rodent business as well. I knew I needed a farm property, even if I wasn't doing the rats. I for sure wanted a farm property. I want to be able to stand in my driveway and look around and not see another house or another person. And that's what I have. But so we found the perfect property, which is where we're living now. But the consequence to that, moving from that basement rec room in my parents' place, it's 100-year-old farmhouse that's on this property now. And there was existing outbuildings already, but I needed the one, which is basically a detached 2-car garage. I needed that for the rat business. And that building, it's a very nice building, but it wouldn't be very conducive to keeping snakes in that building to begin with. Just like bare concrete floors. There's like a cinder block perimeter. So, like right now in the middle of winter when it's super cold, it's okay for the rats, but like you would have like crazy drafts and cold walls and floor and stuff like that. So because of that, I had to just kind of cram all these snakes that I used to have a bunch of room for into this little farmhouse. And I had to get creative too, because it's like the basement of I'm 6'4", and the basement of the farmhouse, like I hit my head on the ceiling, right? And it's unfinished, and there's like leaks, and if it rains really hard, it's just it's not a snake room. And then the upper floor of the house, all of the rooms have like, slanted ceilings like this. And so I had to kind of just keep the whole collection on the main floor of the house, which is really only like 3 rooms. There's like kind of 2 living room spaces and then the kitchen. That's it. That's the whole main floor of the house. So I had to basically curtain off a section of the main floor of the house to keep the snakes in when we moved to this property. And that was okay for a couple of years. And my amazing wife tolerated that for all that time. And, I had this section curtained off with like all the ARS racks and all the ball pythons. But then what wouldn't fit in there was my cage stack with like retics and my green tree pythons and stuff like that. And I don't know, you don't keep retics at all yourself? Or
no, we can't even have retics in Florida.
Okay. Of course. Yeah, you're in Florida. Yeah. So when a retic takes a piss, the smell is otherworldly, man. And
really?
It's so much liquid, and it's just like it's a huge mess. So for the last like 6 years that we've lived at this property, that cage stack with my 2 mainland retics has been in our kitchen, basically.
Wow.
So it's like I'm amazed that my wife is still here with me, putting up with all that, man. But she knew that was always the dream, was to have the building. And even though having to cram everything in this little farmhouse was it was annoying, and I didn't have much space, we both always knew that was on the horizon, getting this building. So had to kind of wait for the time to be right and save up the money. And also, think about what happened during like when COVID kicked off in terms of like building materials. And like when we first started taking the idea even seriously, it was impossible to even find a contractor that would. And so the final building is 20 by 40, which is a lot of room compared to what I had before, but it's not a huge building, and it's not a huge project. And like the contractors I was talking to when I first got started was like, nobody would give me the time of day. Right. And inevitably, or I ended up going through a buddy that I used to work as a security guard. This is a guy I used to work security with, and he's now a contractor. And now, after this is all said and done, this all completely backfired on me because we basically, there's going to be some legal stuff going down, and my buddy's not my buddy anymore. But
oh wow,
yeah, now I have the building, but there are some financial outstanding issues that will need to be taken care of. And that's part of why it took so damn long to get this thing built.
What happened with that? Is it something you can talk about? Or
well, yeah, I could talk about it, but the project started very good. Everything was going on, once you get to the point of having like all the framing done, so you have the skeleton of the building, all the 2x4s and whatnot, and the roof trusses. Once I got to the stage of the electrical being done for the building, my buddy, the contractor, kind of just vanished. And he was on to other projects and stuff, and I was like, dude, can we get this wrapped up, man? Like, I told him from the start that, like, dude, the minute we pull money from the bank to start paying for this project, it's going to start accruing interest. And
100%.
I need the building to put the snakes in, to make the money, to pay for the loan for the building. So the longer it's drawn out, the more cost I'm going to incur. Time is money, right? Everybody knows that.
Exactly.
So
yeah, 100%.
But it came to a head when he ordered the wrong color steel for the outside, like the siding for the outside of the building, which is like, it was like $10,000 worth of steel. And
oh, wow.
I was very clear from the start what color I wanted of this color steel and this color trim for the building, and he totally messed it up. And then we knew day one when that stuff was delivered that it was wrong, and him and I were both there when it got delivered, and I was like, bro, this is not what I asked you for. And
what did he say?
He was, I mean, like, the look on his face was like, obviously he was very shocked, right? And like, oh shit, like, and we went back and forth a bunch. The wrong steel ended up sitting in the driveway for like 6 months, and that was like, nothing else could get moving until that. And I was like, dude, you gotta fix. And like, that's not a thing you can return to the manufacturer, because when you order steel siding for a building like that, it's custom cut to order to the size of. So if somebody else was building an exact replica of my building, then sure, yeah, I could sell that steel to them. But basically he was trying everything in his power to not just get the new steel, right? And eventually we ended up having to go through a new contractor to get the end of the project finished, and now he's going to still be on the hook for all that. But in terms of the functionality of the building, it's completely finished now. So other than that sour part of it, it is done. So, and then I think I started moving animals in here in like August, I think. So
okay.
It took me a while, and I pretty much did it all by myself, just, piece by piece, taking the racks apart and wheeling my cages and my big hatchling racks and the incubator and all that over a couple week period. Moved everything. And the weather, luckily the weather was still nice at that time and it was like right in between seasons too, which is like, I feel like if I was going to pick a month to move a collection, it would be August, because you've not started pairing stuff for the next season yet. Most of the females are through with their cycle. So even if there was still, I can't remember, I think maybe, I don't know. I was going to say if a female actually laid eggs, like was bred inside the old snake room, and then I moved her and then laid eggs in the new room, but I don't think that happened. It was, yeah. So this will be kind of a whole new fresh season. The timing of it just lined up nice. I certainly wouldn't want to be moving snakes in the weather we're having right now, right? But,
nah, that's not a good idea.
No.
It even snowed in Florida, which is nuts. Like
I was meaning to ask you about that. I remembered that you're in Florida, but I couldn't remember what area. Did you get any snow where you're at?
Nah, it was pretty cold, and they actually like shut schools down here. And they shut some businesses down, at least like for part of the day. Yesterday, that was? Yeah, okay, yesterday. Yeah. But we didn't get any snow, but some other folks in like the more western side of Florida, that's a little bit like northwest of us, they got real good snow, like in Pensacola, Tallahassee, stuff like that.
I was seeing some pictures and stuff.
Yeah, they got like snow. At least snow for Florida. I mean, it wasn't
Florida,
we weren't going skiing, but it definitely wasn't just like a little bit of white flakes on the ground either. It was like good.
It'll stick around.
Yeah, my hometown. I'm from Georgia originally.
Okay.
It's not that far from here. It's like 90 minutes away from here. Okay. They got a lot of good snow too. Like my aunt was sending me some pictures of the snow. My mom was sending me pictures of the snow. My mother-in-law, it was a good bit of snow.
So when you say it got pretty cold for where you're at now, what's pretty cold? You're talking to a Canadian.
It was like 33 degrees. That's pretty cold,
okay,
bro.
Okay, that's still. I mean, I would still be like walking around in shorts and t-shirt at that, but just between my buildings, I'm not gonna like hang out and have a beer outside at that temperature. But we're down to yesterday. It was 5 Fahrenheit.
That's crazy, bro. Yeah, that is absolutely nuts. I was talking to a guy that was in Minnesota, and they were in the negatives. Like that's just unfathomable to me. Yeah, like that's crazy.
I unfortunately, it was the worst time of year to run out of firewood. I have 3, which we should talk about that too. I have a wood furnace in the new building here, which I feel like I'm probably not going to need, but I heat the house and my rat shop with firewood and stuff like that. And I ran out of firewood. Which I normally do myself. And so I had to have a guy deliver some, and just trying to stack that fire. Buddy comes in with like a dump trailer, dumps a bunch of firewood, and then the next day had to stack it all up on my firewood rack. And the wind at 5 degrees Fahrenheit, even fully dressed in all my winter gear, think about like a brain freeze that you get when you eat ice cream or something like that. Like it was just trying to stand there and stack this wood. It was like I had to keep going back into the rat shop to like warm up every like 5-6 minutes, because it wasn't, not only was so cold, but the wind was just howling. And it's just so I would have loved like 33 degrees yesterday, but
yeah, I'm good on that kind of weather, man. I couldn't make it, not long term for sure.
Yeah,
not at all, man. And so your new building, is it holding the temps pretty well
I just saw I think it was on the Morph Market Facebook page that somebody was asking about that. Like just yesterday I saw that post. It was like, oh, those of you that have a dedicated outbuilding, because a lot of the United States and Canada was getting this polar vortex, and it was like super, super cold. It was only lasted for about like 3 days. I think it's starting to warm back up now, but so that's probably why. I don't remember who was asking, but so there was a few people commenting on that, and I commented on it too. But so because this is the first winter going into or with the building and having heat and animals in here, so let me back up. During the construction of the building, I installed 2 heat sources, right? Obviously you got to have a backup, right? So I installed a mini split heat pump, which is becoming more and more common these days. They're becoming more affordable, more efficient, and stuff like that. And for anybody that doesn't understand what a heat pump is, it kind of works like an air conditioning unit in reverse, right? So like it's not based on electrical resistance heat. So like if you think of a a toaster, right? You pop a slice of bread down and you can see those glowing elements inside the toaster. That's electrical resistance heat, right? But if your normal air conditioning unit that's like outside your house in, let's say in the middle of summer, if you go put your hand over top of that air conditioner, your outdoor unit, and if it's blowing cold air inside your house, it's blowing hot air outside. And it's same principle in reverse. That's how the mini split works. It's blowing. I won't pretend to be an expert on like the actual science of, but it uses refrigerant and there's a condenser and all this stuff. And from what I understand right now, it almost like gathers all of what little heat there is outside and condenses it and blows it inside your building or whatever, which was shocking to me yesterday because I turned this heat pump on here in the building and at 5 degrees Fahrenheit, which the colder it gets, they become less and less efficient, and you're not really supposed to use it at that kind of temperature. And it still worked, which I was shocked by. But the other heat source that I installed was not a wood stove, but a wood furnace, which is like, there's a fire box that you put pieces of firewood in, light a fire inside, but then there's a hot air plenum on top of that and like a fan. So it kind of works just like a normal furnace in the house where, okay, it's pulling heat from this fire and it blows that hot air into wherever you want. So that's what I did. It probably cost like, I think it was about $10,000 between the unit and then the install for the wood furnace. And then also about $10,000 for the mini split and between the unit and the install. And sitting in here yesterday at 5 degrees Fahrenheit outside with neither of those devices running, it was still a perfect 72 degrees Fahrenheit in here. And that is just the heat coming off of the racks. So the building is so well sealed and well insulated that the humidity and the temperature in here is perfect without needing either of those devices. And that's like what those temps we experienced yesterday, outside of maybe some freak weather event, that's about as cold, maybe some Americans that don't know better. Oh, it's Canada, it's cold all the time, right? But it's not. And I'm in like the almost southernmost part of Canada. There's plenty of states that the entire state is more north than I am here in southern Ontario. But yeah, that temperature yesterday is pretty much as cold as it's ever going to get. And so to walk into this building without the wood furnace going, without the mini split going, and it's still the exact right temperature that I need in here. Like 70 to 72 is not, I wanted a little warmer than that, but it's still perfectly safe for the snakes. Right. And they, of course, they all have their heat pad. And as I learned, even in those super low temperatures, I can still turn on the mini split. So that's kind of where I'm at now, is like, I've made this realization over these cold days we've had that huge, and like the wood furnace, we had to have that thing craned. Like when the crane showed up to lift the roof trusses onto the building, the crane had to lift. It's this huge metal unit that like you couldn't move by hand, and it's in here permanently now. There's no taking it out and selling it or anything like that. But I'm still glad I have both of these heat systems, because it's just it's the ultimate insurance. And I rigged it up like I don't have it so that if the power goes out, a generator will automatically kick on, but I had the electrical done in such a way that there's a there's the main electrical panel, and then there's a kind of a little mini panel, which is the generator panel. And there's this big outlet on the outside of the building. So I have a couple portable generators. So if the power went out for an extended period of time, which hasn't happened since I've had animals in here, knock on wood, all I have to do is wheel my generator over to the side of the building, plug it in, and then it's all wired so that it won't power the entire building. Like all the racks will work with the heat tape and stuff, but I at least will have power to the mini split and the wood furnace. So and let's say I couldn't use the generator and I couldn't have any electrical power of any kind, then I still have the ultimate backup of the wood furnace, right? So the power could be out for like months on end, which hopefully never happens. But if that happened, just as long as I have firewood, the snakes can stay warm. But it was a little bit of a kick in the nuts to be like, oh yeah, all this time and effort and money to get this thing, and now we don't actually need it. But in a couple years from now, we may have. Like, remember when that big Texas freeze happened a couple years ago, and like
I'd rather have and not prepared. I'd rather have and not need than need and not have any day.
Exactly.
Any day.
So
did you tap in with anybody?
What's that?
Did you tap in with anybody in the snake community in terms of like any advice for like how you structure and design your building setup?
Yeah, I talked to a couple guys. I talked to Will Morose a bunch about it when I was still in the planning stages of it. And it was funny. I think he may at this time be on to another facility than the one I'm about to talk about. But when we first started talking about buildings, I remember him telling me he had this building built out of what's called ICF, which is insulated concrete forms. And I think they're like, it's almost like a big Lego brick, essentially, a big, huge, heavy Lego brick made out of concrete. I don't really know, but obviously there's layers and insulation and stuff. But I remember him telling me about needing to like run air conditioning in the winter time to keep things like, it was the same kind of thing that I'm experiencing, not to that degree, but like all this heat coming off of the racks is, instead, like in my 100-year-old farmhouse that is like, made out of tissue paper, all that heat is just like escaping, right? And especially because I didn't actually have a sealed room, it was just curtained off. It's crazy to me that the same amount of racks and the same amount of snakes, all that heat, like, so my electrical bill essentially has not gone up or down. It's the same, but actually it probably has gone down because all that same amount of racks and same heat tape is all being captured now. And that obviously was the same thing that was happening to Will with that ICF building. And I guess it potentially has the ability to work too well, like it's too insulated. But I did not think that this building was gonna work that way. Like we did, there is insulation under the slab, like just normal, like 2-inch styrofoam sheeting basically under, which I didn't even know they could do that. I was kind of like, well, if you pour this concrete slab over top of styrofoam, isn't it gonna like crush it or something? But obviously that's not the case. It worked out fine. But then I think what is most important, like the walls all around me it's not spray foam insulation, which is what most people would think if I tell them that like the building is working so well and so efficient, because spray foam like gives you like a perfect seal, but it's just normal pink fiberglass insulation that's in this building. And then in the attic space is just blown in insulation like most people would have in a house. But I opted for the maximum R value, which is the insulative value, I guess, of insulation. And so that's probably the most important part of this building is the attic insulation, because obviously everybody knows heat rises, right? So none of that heat is escaping through the attic and you know, not just bleeding off into the outside air. So that's part of what is was keeping everything perfect. But I'm glad, at least unlike Will there, I don't need to run air conditioning. It's like it's perfect temperature in here.
That's what's up, man. I'm glad that worked out for you. Yeah. So earlier you mentioned like you've been doing this like almost 20 years, and we talked about this a little bit before going live here, but somebody reached out to me and basically told me to ask you about like the candy and albino stuff. So for those who don't know, and then also to really kind of get me up to speed on it, talk about your experience like with that project, kind of what went down, and give us like a time frame and whatnot.
Okay, so yeah, for anybody that doesn't know, the candy mutation, recessive mutation, and toffee are the same, genetically identical. Candy is much more prevalent in the US, and toffee is much more prevalent in Canada. There's some, and you know, they're compatible, right? It's kind of like Desert Ghost and Enhancer, right?
Yeah.
And it almost exactly the same in the fact that Desert Ghost, you know, became widely bred and popular in the US, and Enhancer came out of Canada, right? So I way back in like I was still just a kid. This was probably like 2008, so I would have been 18, only a couple years into the hobby, and my parents loaned me some. Oh, there's Will in the chat right now. My parents loaned me some money to invest in the hobby, which I did pay them back. It took me way longer to pay them back than I thought it would. But part of that original investment, I bought in 2008 a het toffee male, and that's like, anybody that has been in this for any amount of time knows that pretty much the slowest way to start a recessive project is with a het male, and that's what I bought. And at the time, he was it was $2,500, which,
oh wow,
you know, that's like a reasonable amount of money now. But remember, this was 2008, right? So well, dude's parked out front of Area 51. But so yeah, I bought this het toffee male, and it was, I think at the time of me buying that male, it was not the toffee hadn't actually been reproduced yet. Like, so all we had was the images of the original toffee male, and the breeder that had that made a bunch of hets. He sold those hets to somebody else. I bought this het toffee male secondhand, and so when I started breeding him to whatever, to I've had a bunch of normal females and whatever, pos het albino, this and whatever. I basically wanted to just breed that het toffee male to as many females as possible to get as many pos het toffee holdbacks as possible. And so I had this 150% pos het albino female that I bought at the first expo I ever went to when I was 16. And I had been raising her for a couple years. I wasn't counting on her being a het albino at all. She was one of my largest females at the time. So by breeding her to this het toffee male, that would give me the largest amount of eggs, largest amount of holdbacks to hold back these pos hets to breed back to the 100% het toffee male. And in that clutch, got the het toffee male 2008. This clutch to the pos het albino female would have been 2010. And I even remember making jokes to like some of my snake buddies that I had been talking to at the time, being like, how cool would it be? Like, what if she is het albino? What if what if Toffee and albino are compatible with each other? And it was just like, that was you have to think at that time there was like complexes starting to form, and this is compatible with this, whatever. Like, okay, cinnamon and het red xanthic are compatible, but there was no precedent for that in ball pythons for recessives being compatible with each other. And I guess now, like, I mean, in like an allelic way like that, where, so I guess, cryptic and clown, is another example of that. But then am I forgetting? And is that, I think that's it. It's just the two, like toffee candy is compatible with albino, and then cryptic is compatible with clown. But in terms of recessives, that
I can't think of any others around the top of my head.
And from what I remember at the time, it had been proven in reticulated pythons. There's the regular white phase albino, there's purple albino, and there's lavender albino in retics I'm talking about. And that it works in almost the exact same, or not almost, it works in the exact same way, where a purple albino retic would be equivalent to a toffee. A lavender albino retic would be the same as a toffino, and then a regular albino retic would be the same as a regular albino ball python. So that was the only precedent we had for compatible recessives. And sure enough, when that first clutch hatched out, there was a visual, just one. I think it was 6 eggs and one single visual. And I was like one of the best moments of my entire life. I still lived at my parents' place at the time, and I was like running around and screaming and jumping for joy. And like and the funniest part too is it hatched on my birthday too.
Oh, nice.
So
that's what's up.
Yeah.
That's
so it was like the ultimate birthday present. And my parents were like telling me to shut up, and I'm like gonna scare the neighbors, whatever. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, I just proved it. Like, I didn't just get lucky. Like, I just proved this whole other series of possibilities with this. But so the thing is, with people that don't know, when you hatch a toffino or a candino or a pure toffee or candy, when any of them hatch in the egg, or even out of the egg, even after first shed, they look like a regular albino. There's no purple coloration at all. It is just yellow and white. So that was the thing, was I was pretty certain what had just happened. It was that this was a cross. This was an allelic cross between toffee and albino. And so I cleverly named it the toffino.
Okay.
It's for, to my credit, it stuck. There's a lot of silly names out there, but it's a toffee and an albino, so toffino, right? But it just looked like a regular albino. And because I had bought the het toffee male secondhand, not directly from the one breeder that had visual toffee stuff, I didn't post it, and I guess Facebook and stuff was around at the time, but only just barely. There wasn't.
Yeah,
there wasn't
No,
there was only the forums, which the two major forums at the time was ballpythons.net and the Bush League Breeders Club. I think bp.net still exists now, but it's probably not very frequented. Most people are just hanging out on Instagram or YouTube or whatever, right? But I shared those results with a couple of friends, and there was some back and forth. Oh, maybe I got hustled with this het toffee male. Maybe somebody just sold me a het albino male. Then I bred it to this pos het albino female, and this visual pops out. Must be an albino, and it looks like an albino. And so basically I ended up reaching out to the two big breeders, the one Pete Call that had the candy stuff, and then Craig Stewart up here in Canada that had the toffee. Both of them knew each other too, because they're basically working two sides of the same coin, the same project.
Right.
And they essentially told, and I was just, I'm 20 years old at the time. This is only my second successful breeding season. And the first season was before that was kind of a wash. Like my incubator was crappy. I cut the eggs way too early, all these mistakes that somebody makes with like their first season, first clutches. So that almost was like one of my very first, like good clutches was the clutch that this world first Tofino came out of. And both of those breeders kind of told me to keep it quiet, see what happens. We're going to see, is this thing going to color up at all? And I was pretty sure it was gonna, and kind of the plan I had formulated in my head was, okay, yeah. Oh, and I looked at these guys like celebrities, especially Pete. Pete Call is like a huge cornerstone of, I mean, he's not really front and center now, present day, but in those days he was one of the most important breeders in the entire hobby, in the entire history of ball pythons. For those that don't know, Pete Call founded the Pied project, right? So having followed this hobby since I was a child, and then this thing happens, and then I'm talking on the phone to Pete Call. This is crazy. And then, he told me to keep this quiet. Of course. Yeah. Shut your mouth. I'm going to do what he says. And then I kind of told myself I was going to keep it quiet for a year. I was going to repeat the pairing, make sure it was not a fluke. And then theoretically, by the time next year, when this second clutch hatches, I'll have more Tofinos in the clutch. I'll share that to the forums, to the world. People will say again, "Oh, bro, no, you got hustled. This is somebody sold you a head albino."
What the hell is this kid talking about?
Then I could just go like boom, and then show them the year-old snake from the first clutch, and it's like fully colored up. So that was my plan. It ended up working out that I had told this information to some friends. They let it slip to other friends. The information made its way to Garrick DeMeyer, who's still very much part of this hobby now. And I got no ill will against Garrick. And he had some toffee stuff, and he had a bunch of head albino stuff. And he heard that they might be compatible, so he bred them together. He posts this like YouTube video while my second clutch with the Tofino stuff was only like 2 weeks away from hatching, where it was like I was gonna do the big reveal and tell everybody what was going on here. And by that time, my original Tofino male, who I still have, by the way, he's only like 15 feet away from me right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I could never sell that snake, right? That's like one of the other, and I also still have my very first pet ball python that I got as a kid. She's in this room too. So if the building was burning down, those are like two of the ones I would grab quickly, right? But so that male had colored up, and then Garrick DeMeyer post this YouTube video showing that he had done the same thing, showed the babies. And then I kind of had to come forward with the whole story to everybody else. And then it was kind of like, it got crazy for a minute, because there was, during that time that I had told those big breeders what I had done, they were still selling visual toffees and visual candies for tens of thousands of dollars for that like year, that between when I hatched the first Tofino and then revealed later. So these people that had been investing in those projects with these big breeders, then when I kind of blasted the whole story out onto the forums, some of these guys that had invested tens of thousands of dollars were furious that this information was known by these breeders, but then they they didn't like, here, I'll take your 10,000 for this toffee male. By the way, I secretly know that it's compatible with albino, but I'm not going to tell you that. Otherwise you wouldn't give me this money. So there was people that wanted to like sue me for yeah, it did. Obviously nothing ever came of it, but like there was a couple guys that wanted to get together and do like a class action lawsuit that against me. And I'm still at this time just a kid. I'm only 21. And
but how is it?
It's not my fault. It's their fault. If you're gonna sue anybody, it's the breeder that took your money, right? It's not my fucking fault.
Class action lawsuit,
right? So obviously I didn't get sued or whatever, and then that kind of at that same time when Garrick had hatched out the stuff, I then a couple weeks later hatched out more. So in that first clutch, I only hatched one Toffino male that I still have. And then in the second clutch, there was 3 more Toffinos, which hatched just after the world learned about all this information. So it was good. It was great marketing to sell these. So I had those 3 Toffinos in the second clutch, the second year, were also all males. So I didn't need any of them. I didn't need to hold back anything. All of them were for sale. So some of the biggest breeders, all in Canada, none of them left the country. Those second, third, and fourth Toffino in the world. But that gave me this crazy amount of not only notoriety, but leverage and income to build my collection off of, like, I'm selling these for high value to these breeders, and a lot of, for at least half of that value was trade to these breeders. And I got a bunch of it's funny to look back on what I traded that stuff for. Like one of them was like a queen bee female and like a genetic stripe and a pied and stuff. But like that stuff at the time was super valuable and rare. And that's part of how, exactly. And that's how I built the bulk of my collection as it stands now, was the surge of income that came from selling those 3 males after this whole thing exploded. And then the rest is history, as they say. So yeah.
So Darren in the chat said something about the market for that project like tanking shortly after that. Like, was that the case?
So maybe not shortly, but basically once this information came out, the price of toffees and candies overnight dropped, but also the price of regular albinos overnight skyrocketed. So kind of they both did this, they didn't reach the same point, but price of the expensive stuff came down, price of the cheap stuff. And it's funny to think about that now, because like, who wants a regular albino? Like it would be very hard pressed to sell a regular albino.
Nobody I know.
Right, exactly. It would only to be to a pet owner. But some of those guys that were burned by investing in this project, and now suddenly anybody can make, and it took a while to figure out. And I even in retrospect set myself back on the project because we didn't know if an adult Toffino would end up looking the same as an adult toffee, which is kind of, to compare it back again to the cryptic clown stuff. I don't work the project, but as far as I know, an adult, well, it doesn't matter, adult or baby, but a cryptic and a krypton look the same, right? There's no visual difference between the two.
Yeah, they look pretty similar.
Right. So now a clown looks different from a cryptic and a krypton, but the allelic cross, the krypton, which would be analogous to the Toffino in my project, in those early days, once all that stuff blew up and I started okay, let's move on from this. And now I'm going to work this project. I never wanted to produce a clutch in which I would get visual toffees and toffinos in the same clutch. So I was very choosy about my pairings because of that, because I wanted all the visuals in the clutch to either be toffees or all the visuals are toffinos. I didn't want to mix because I didn't know if I'd be able to tell them apart, and I didn't, especially after the slight scare of people wanting to sue me, or at least like threatening to sue me.
That's wild, bro. Class action wild.
Right. I didn't want to sell a toffino accidentally as a toffee, and then the person comes back to me later. Now, we know, everybody knows now, anybody that's seen an adult toffee and an adult toffino, the toffees are much richer in color, and the toffino is kind of a perfect in between of a toffee and an albino. It's like, lavender purple, and then the toffee's much darker purple. But the guys that had done that investing, some of them were so scorned that they were starting to dump stuff for cheap, and like, because that was the only way that they could get back at those breeders that burned them in the first place, that the founders of each of the projects, the candy and the toffee, and they kind of, some of those guys probably saw it that okay, suddenly overnight now, anybody that has, which at the time albino was plenty prevalent in most people's collections. So almost anybody, by doing what I originally did and just go out and buy a het toffee male, het candy male, and then in 6 months you can be making visuals too that looks almost as good as the pures. So yeah, I wouldn't say overnight the price tanked, but a major portion of it was guys that were burned by it, kind of just being like, screw it, like, I'm going to move on to the next project. I'm still going to breed this stuff. I'm still going to sell it, but I'm going to kind of dump it quick. But like that, I don't know how much that's really affected me. Like, I've certainly made plenty of money over the years on toffees, and it's funny, there's guys that are ahead of me in combos now with that stuff, that it's like, how did that happen? But that, like I said, that because of those early days of not wanting to put toffees or to have toffees and toffinos in the same clutch, that set me back, right? So once I realized that didn't matter anymore, then I started, and also like the first combos I was making was like, oh, I made spider het toffees and pastel het toffees and stuff, and like now the direction I'm going with that is like mixing all the dark genes that I can, all the dark genes that I have I'm mixing into that project. Leopard stuff, blackhead, hurricane, cypress, GHI, cinnamon, and it's basically the more of these, the darker the animal you can make, if you flip it into the toffee color palette, those background blacks are going to turn to purple on the visual. So that's the direction I'm heading now. But it's like, feels a little silly, especially talking about this now in retrospect. Like, I could have been so much further ahead, but I can say that about anything.
You live and you learn. Yeah.
Maybe I should have bought a sunset or a monsoon, like the very first one. Yeah, of course. Like, if I knew what was going to be popular in the future, or if I had gone down the clown route faster, then yeah, sure, would have made more money, cooler combos. But I'm just doing my thing, man. I'm not trying to race anybody, right? So
just putting snakes in the tub, man.
That's right.
I do want to talk about hybrid snakes, but we got to take a commercial break real quick. Then we come back and we'll chat on that a little bit.
Perfect.
All right, y'all stick with us.
Known for his innovative approach to genetic shed testing and top quality ball pythons, Grey Rider Reptiles also excels in exceptional customer service and responsiveness. With a quick turnaround time, Charlie ensures you get the service you want and need. Visit shedtesting.com to explore his offerings and experience the best in the business. Don't miss out. Head to shedtesting.com today and unlock the power of your breeding projects.
Peace and love, family. We invite you into the heart of our serenity, Ancestral Royal Pythons. At Ancestral Royal Pythons, we're not just breeders, we're nurturers of love and growth. Each of our high-end ball pythons is a tribute to the grandeur of the natural world and our dedication to quality. Reach out today and bring one of our creations into your home. This is Ancestral Royal Pythons. Your journey begins here.
Here's to the exciting world of Ebony and Ivory reptiles. From unforgettable parties and events to keeping and hatching some of the dopest reptiles in the reptile hobby, we're all about education, quality, integrity, and respect. Hit us up and see how we can help make your next project a reality. Experience Ebony and Ivory reptiles, where fascination meets fun.
Ebony and Ivory reptiles.
Big shout out to the sponsors, man. Appreciate you, fellas. So what got you into hybrid snakes? Like, tell us a little bit about like your background in the hybrid snakes. I know we touched on it a little bit last episode, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get you back. Because you was like a very fun guest, but then I also wanted to talk about the hybrid snakes as well.
For sure, yeah. So like all the stuff we just talked about, I started doing the ball pythons when I was just a kid and built the collection. The whole Toffee Toffino thing happened. Collection got bigger, and all the while I've been getting deeper into the hobby and learning about other types of snakes and lizards and tortoises. And it's like, well, yeah, I'm always going to have a collection of ball pythons, but where do I go from here? What else do I want? And this was, it was at the time before import export was easy to do with like Reptile Express and stuff like that. This whole CITES process was more convoluted and not as accessible to a little kid. And but oddly enough, one of the biggest breeders on the scene at the time, and I was going to say arguably still, but not really, but I'm talking about Bob Clark, who, he's major founder of several ball python genes like albino and genetic stripe. I think he did genetic stripe, but he's a big retic guy too, and he had quite a varied collection. But he was one of the only breeders that, and again, this was like before Facebook, definitely way before Morph Market. He had a pretty reasonable website, and I looked at all this stuff he had available, and I did a big ended up doing a big order of like a bunch of pairs of these other types of snakes and stuff. And most of those I don't have anymore, but in that original box I got from Bob Clark was a pair of reticulated pythons, which like I was talking about earlier with like how messy retics are. And also I still have them. That's actually the closest snake to me right now is my big mainland female retic. She's like 15, 16 feet long, and I've had her since I was 18 years old. But that was when I started getting into other, and that was kind of the direction I felt pulled towards was, I want other snakes, but I really like pythons. I did a little bit of time keeping boas and stuff, and I still have one Brazilian rainbow boa, which is just a beautiful snake, and I don't have a mate for it anyway, so it's kind of just for show. But I fell really deep into the python stuff and like learning about all the different types of pythons and where they come from, and the Australian ones and the African ones. And then so I was starting to get interested in just learning about these other types of pythons and wanting to buy them and keep them and stuff. And I started doing that. And I think then this was still in the forum days, like I was talking about before. Kevin McCurley of Nerd was kind of the only guy doing this hybrid stuff. And it's like, clicking through the forums, and then boom, you see a picture of like, what is that? A wall python? What do you? Oh, like a woma and a ball python, and you're like, what do you? What do you mean? Like a woma is like, when you look at a woma python, it's one of the least python-like pythons that there is. They don't have heat pits in the front of their face. To the untrained eye, they look way more like a colubrid, like a corn snake, than a python. And then, I mean, if anything proves that they're a python, it's that you can breed it to a ball python and get a living, viable offspring from it. But I think that was probably the first hybrid I ever saw, was the walls, and then shortly followed by the angry balls, the Angolan python. And that's a little bit more like easy to wrap your head around, because anybody that's seen an Angolan python,
they look like
they're
cousins.
very similar. Yeah, very, very similar to the ball python. They've got the same eye stripes, almost the same size. Their Angolans are a little bit longer and skinnier, and then they have the beaded scales compared to the ball python. But so those would have been the first two hybrids that I would have seen, probably both from Kevin. And I was like, I gotta do this. And I of course would have bought some if they were available, but they weren't. So, and I was like, by the time I started thinking about even doing that, I'm like, man, I have 10 different species of python right here. Well, let's just do it myself, right? And so I started doing that, and especially with those two hybrids I just mentioned, the woma ball and the angry ball, the Angolan ball. I had, in terms of womas and in terms of Angolans, I had just a pair of each of those. And as I'm raising them up, the male, they're, the same age, right? So the male is going to reach maturity faster than the female. And so, you're like, okay, well, the Angolan female is not up to size yet. So this Angolan male, though, he's ready to go. So let's put him in with a ball python. And also all these hybrids that I had seen in the early days from Kevin and stuff, I never saw anything with morphs in it. And I was like, well, I mean, I certainly did by the time I made my first pairing, but it was still rare. It was like nobody wanted to waste a morph female ball python on making silly hybrid stuff, right? And it's funny now, for certain types of combos, like it's almost worth it. It's worth more to make hybrids with them. Like, but something I've found with the wall pythons in particular is, for whatever reason, I've made a few that are pinstripe combos. So like the female ball python that I use has pinstripe, and it makes for, so if you scroll through my Instagram and you see a wall python that's like super crazy looking, it has pinstripe in it. And so who wants a pinstripe ball python now? And who's gonna just keep a female pinstripe sitting around on the shelf if you're trying to make money breeding ball pythons? But it's valuable to me to breed a woma python too, right? But so yeah, those original ones that I saw were all normals, and then so I wanted to figure that out too. Like I had seen evidence that combos or morphs transferred over, so I wanted to do that for myself and see how it turns out. And so yeah, I started the first hybrids I made were, and now it's funny I say all that about not wasting more females, whatever. The first hybrid clutches I did for wall pythons and for Angolan pythons were both using just normals, because I didn't want to waste their females. So, but it was still so cool because it's funny. I have now made pure I have bred Angolan pythons and made pure Angolans. I held back almost all of them. But I have yet to produce Woma pythons. I've made several clutches of hybrid wall pythons, really? But I have a pair of Womas. For a long time, I was scared to pair them together because Womas are reptile eaters in the wild. Like they'll eat like bearded dragons and stuff like that. And it's not quite to the degree of like colubrids, like king snakes or whatever. If you're breeding king snakes, sometimes the female is just going to eat the male or whatever. But I don't think there's much of a precedent for that happening with Woma pythons, but it's still freaked me out for a while and the one Woma female I have, they have a reputation for being fairly nasty and bitey. She's not like that. Like I can pick her up and she's not going to bite me. I have other friends that I know there's people listening right now that I picked up a friend's Woma python at a party like last year and it latched on to me like big time. And we had to put hand sanitizer in the mouth and stuff to get her to release off my hand and whatever. But mine's not like that, my female, but she's really jumpy. Like it's as if she's asleep. When I open the bin, it's like she acts like she's asleep completely all the time. And if I just barely touch her, or if I put the male Woma python in there and he barely touches her, she'll like totally freak out and move really fast. And so that's part of the reason why I've kind of overcome that now. I've been pairing them a bunch this year, but I've still yet to produce pure Woma pythons. But yeah, big roundabout way of saying that I kind of just have been fascinated by the fact that it's possible, first of all, and then when it gets into that really funky, like I said, it makes sense that you can breed an Angolan python to a ball python.
So how does it work with compatibility? Like, so are all pythons compatible with all pythons, or is it some are, some aren't?
So as far as I know, there's definitely there's probably a bunch that are possible but have not been done yet. But there are ones that, with making hybrid anything, whether if you're making like ligers or whatever, or any type of hybrid, there's the genetic compatibility, but then there's also the physical compatibility, right? Like,
exactly.
Like,
that's where I was going.
Like a tiny little male. Now we know berm balls are a thing. You can breed a Burmese python to a ball python. Now I think that's where it gets complicated too, is sometimes if you want to make X hybrid, you can't do it both ways. I think to make a berm ball, I don't know if anybody's done it with breeding a male Burmese python to a female ball python. I think it's usually the reverse. So it would be or I think I said it's backwards. That's
me,
backwards.
like the size makes it seem like it would be switched around.
It's So I think it's usually done with a male ball python to a female Burmese python, but I don't know if it's ever been done with a male Burmese python to a female ball python. But then there's also a little bit of weirdness with like there are dwarf Burmese pythons now, so that might make it a little easier. But then also there's dwarf and super dwarf retics, and for a very long time there was kind of a myth going around of that they called it the Baltic python, ball python retic. And I think it was just a joke from Kevin McCurley, who, like I said, was most famous, most well known for making these hybrids initially. But it was some of the first golden child retic morphs that Kevin had made, I think. And they have a similar eye stripe to ball python. So I think some of the first ones he made, even to this day, I bet if you were to Google ball python retic hybrid, you would probably find these images. And so a lot of people thought, oh, whoa, even that's possible, ball python and retic. And as far as I know, that's never been done. But then when you start getting to the more exotic stuff, like to me, until I did it 3 times, what the wall seemed exotic enough, because that's an African python and Australian python that obviously would never encounter each other in the wild. Right. So that's just astonishing to me that you can get a living being by breeding those things. And it's like when you hatch something like that out, something that only occurred to me after, and like holding it and looking at it, it's like, this is an animal. This is a living animal. It has no Latin name, no classification.
Yeah.
There is no, ball python is Python regis, and woolman python is Aspidites ramsey. And this thing that's in my hands right now has no Latin name, no native range. It's like, people say it's like playing God or whatever, but like just achieving that is so thrilling. But then when you see stuff, which I haven't done this, but like it is possible to make a green tree python to ball python hybrid. Like that is confirmed. There are pictures of that, and it's like that is two snakes that obviously, again, will never meet in the wild, but are so different behaviorally from each other. And just, like, people ask me that too. I mean, that's where you get into like the ethical side of things for hybrid wise. Like people will get up in arms about even let's say the wall pythons. Woma pythons generally you keep a little bit drier than they're in like rough desert terrain in their native range, like sand and rocks and stuff like that. And that's one thing with a Woma python, they're never going to have a bad shed, because they are just, no matter how low that humidity is, they get that shed off no problem. But then you've obviously ball pythons have bad sheds all the time. They need to be kept a little bit more humid. So people will be like, well, how could you breed 2 snakes together and make this snake? And like it's going to get, if you keep it at X humidity that a ball python needs, it's going to get a respiratory infection because of the Woma python blood in it. And it's just like, well, I mean, that's a logical thought process, but that's just not what happens, right? Like, so all of my wall pythons, I keep no different than the rest of my ball pythons. They're in my ARS rack, same. And other than the humidity part, temperature wise, mostly keeping them at the same kind of temp. And so, yeah, I've had none of my walls have ever got respiratory infections, but then I feel like there could be limits pushed that's I don't know how different of 2 pythons we could possibly get that you would get a viable offspring from, that just have totally different. But like at the end of the day, they're all still pythons, right? So most of them we keep at the same temperature, with just a notable exception, blood and short tail pythons. We just keep for hotspot just a little bit cooler. That's part of why blood pythons have pretty bad, or it's getting better now, but bad reputation for being mean and bitey and nasty and stuff. Is in the early days, a lot of people were keeping blood pythons way too hot at ball python temperatures. And so even in that case, that's a hybrid that's been done. Blood python to ball python, which funny enough, that's one I have a reasonable amount of blood pythons, and I've got lots of ball pythons. I have yet to be successful in making that hybrid because for whatever reason, it seems male blood pythons are just not interested at all in breeding with a female ball python. So to make that hybrid, which plenty of people have, and with cool morphs mixed in, and in that regard, you know, there are no morphs for Angolan pythons or Woma pythons. There are different lines that have different coloration and, you know, line breeding stuff, but blood pythons, there's cool morphs. Ball pythons, there's cool morphs, and so you can mix them together and stuff. But yeah, for whatever reason, you only seem to be, or people have only been able to make those by putting a male ball python with a female blood python. So that kind of takes us back to the physical compatibility thing, where, I mean, there are pythons of all different shapes and sizes, right? And different genuses too, right? Even though we call them pythons, and there is a python genus, which the ball python is part of, the blood python, Burms, all that stuff. But then there's also the whole Morelia genus, the carpet python stuff, and then the Aspidites genus, the Womas and the blackheads, and the Antaresia, the anthill and Stimson pythons and stuff like that. So that's where my knowledge I'm still building that knowledge base. Like I said, I think I'm up to 11 or 12 different species of python now, but as far as hybrids, I have only made just the 2 types now several clutches of each, of the Angolan hybrids and the wall hybrids. I am working on carpals, I guess you would call them, carpet balls. So I have yeah, and the carpet of choice for me, I have Brettles pythons, and I have IJs, Erie and Jaya, which people more often now call Papuan carpet pythons.
Yeah.
That's what I'm using. So I have a female IJ Papuan that I'm breeding to a male ball python, and they lock like that's my hybrid project for this year, and they lock almost every single time I put them together. Like they're not just like close to each other. It's like, that's a very clear lock. And so I'm excited for that. So you know, that's part of my goal with this whole hobby is not to make millions of dollars selling ball pythons, but it's every notch on the belt, right? So every, you know, individual pure python species that I can breed. I think I'm up to 4 or 5 now, the, you know, pure python species that I've bred. But then having all these different pythons and then being interested in this hybrid stuff, that's every one is another notch on the belt, right? Like it's a challenging thing that not everybody has a collection built to do that. And then even people that I have a blood python here and I have a ball python here. Well, it doesn't mean you're going to be successful at getting babies out of it, right? So that's my ultimate goal with the hybrid stuff, is to get 4 species in one animal. So there's plenty of 2-way hybrids, like the ones we've been talking about, the walls and the angries, but they're Elijah Armus, juggernaut reptiles. Yeah, he's fairly well known as a hybrid guy as well. To my knowledge, he's the only guy that's done a 3-way hybrid, which was a cross between Sumatran short-tail python, so black blood python, Angolan python, and ball python. So okay, the babies he would have hatched would have been like, I think 25% Angolan, or sorry, 25% Sumatran, 25% Angolan, and 50% ball python, I think, something like that. So that's where I want to go, is it possible? Because you start to lose fertility with these hybrid, you know, most people.
That's what I was about to ask. Like,
yeah,
is it like certain like hybrid combos that you lose fertility, or is it just kind of like with any hybrids, there's that kind of like chance that they won't be fertile?
There's certainly always a chance. I think what it comes down to is how distantly related are the 2 species. So I know for certain that angry ball hybrids are fully fertile. I've seen pictures again from Kevin McCurley of females sitting on a full clutch of beautiful fertile eggs. So like I talked about before, that's not much of a stretch because, you know, I could even after all these years of doing this, I could show a Angolan python to like my parents and they wouldn't know that it's not a ball python, right? So it makes sense that you can breed them together and that the offspring is fertile. I'm fairly certain, people ask me all the time, especially when I'm vending a show and I have the Woma hybrids for sale on the table. I talk all day at the show of people ask me questions about them. And from what I know from talking to other hybrid guys, they are almost entirely infertile, the wall hybrids. But I hear these little whispers that there's a chance that female wall pythons are mildly fertile, which is complete opposite of what you might think. You'd think if I could get any viable genetic material out of one of these hybrids, it would be from a male wall python, breeding him to whatever, and then potentially some of his swimmers one of them's gonna make it, right? But then for a female to actually like develop and go through the whole process of growing follicles and ovulating, like that just seems way more complicated. But that's what I haven't seen any evidence. That's just whispers from other hybrid guys. So I have a good deal of female wall pythons that I've held back. And to me, they're mostly just showpiece animals. I love showing them to people that visit. I love bringing them to shows. And even just posting photos of them, it generates a lot of engagement, right? But I will try to breed them. Like, what's the worst that could happen? It's just nothing. They won't lay anything. But kind of a rule of thumb I was told by other hybrid guys are within the same genus, they're always going to be fertile. So in the python genus, we have the balls, the Angolans, the bloods, the berms, others as well. But so by that logic, a super ball, which is a blood python, ball python hybrid, should be fully fertile. A burn ball should be fully fertile. An angry ball should be fully fertile. Every combo there, that's got me thinking, I don't know if I've ever seen an Angolan Burmese cross. That would be pretty slick. Might have to go down that route. And then also in the Aspidaites genus, so the Woma pythons and the black-headed pythons, I think that's the only two snakes in the genus. But if I bred those two together, made a hybrid, theoretically that might be fertile because the two snakes, because they're in the same genus, are very closely related, and then therefore the hybrid offspring also might be so. But so for me to achieve my goal of getting 4 species in one animal, I might have to cheat a little bit in the fact that basically I'm going to have to breed 2 hybrids together. So each of those 2 hybrids, or each hybrid, is going to have 2 species, breed them together, and then there's 4 species in the mix. But each of those 2 hybrids that I end up breeding together I'm going to have to know that they're viable and fertile. So the 2 are going to have to be fairly closely related. So probably one of those hybrids that I use is going to be an angry ball, an Angolan hybrid, because I know males and females, no problems, fully fertile. And then I don't know what the other side of that equation looks like yet, but it's going to have to be something that works, and it might take me another 20 years to get there, but we'll see.
Do you feel like more and more people kind of getting into the hybrid game or getting attracted to the space?
That's where I struggle a bit with that, because I don't know. I've never had any trouble selling any of the hybrids that I've made, and there's always plenty of interest. But then it does start to, most people that are in this hobby are interested in breeding, right? There's only it's a smaller subset of people that are just the pet only people, or maybe people that are a little more advanced from that are familiar with everything and the breeding and stuff, but they just want some pretty snakes, whatever. But then I struggle with when, like what I was just talking about with the fertility of some of these hybrids, like to sell somebody a snake like a wall python that I'm pretty sure is infertile. I mean, they can't do any damage with that, right? And that's part of what people don't like about hybrids. People talk about muddying bloodlines and stuff like that. And it's like, well, okay, well, most people can look at a hybrid and know that it's a hybrid, right? It would take several generations of me taking an angry ball and breeding it back to a ball python, back to a ball python, back to a ball python, so that the percentage of Angolan blood in that offspring gets smaller and smaller and smaller. It would obviously start looking more and more like a ball, but like nobody's doing that. Like I like the clean, even numbers. Like I'm talking about getting 4 species in one snake. Obviously that end result is going to be 25% this python, 25% this python, 20 and 4 different species, 25% each. But then when you see these weird percentage numbers like you see in super dwarf retakes, like, oh, this is 67.7%. Right. And it's like, most people in this hobby have some degree of like OCD. Like we like our nice, clean, everything's clean. We have our racks, everything's labeled, and here's the incubator, and all the clutch boxes are all stacked up. Like there's some degree of like OCD, and those weird percentages are too much for me. That like I don't even want to make a label for an animal like that, much less like figure out selling it or whatever. So that's where it gets weird with like people getting interested in the hybrid stuff and then also wanting to breed them. So like, those first angry balls that I made, I sold them all. And I mean, it's not like dog breeding or whatever, where you make the customer sign like a non-compete or some sort of thing, or the animal has to be spayed and neutered or whatever. Like anybody I sell one of these snakes to is free to breed it however they want. And most people I sell a hybrid to probably only have ball pythons. And that's like I said, I don't have trouble selling them. But I also don't want to be like, no, only I can make the hybrids, not you. Like I can't gatekeep hybrids as a whole. Right. But I don't like the idea of somebody breeding a hybrid back to the pure version of one of the species in the hybrid repeatedly over and over, which again, like I said, as far as I know, nobody's actually doing that, but that's the concern that people have with the hybrid stuff. But most of that is negated just by the fact that most of these crazier hybrids that draw even more interest are the ones that are very distantly related and then therefore mostly infertile, right?
Gotcha.
So yeah,
that makes sense. So if somebody was like looking to get into like breeding hybrids, like what advice would you have for them?
Well, basically you need adults of several different species. And all my expertise is in python hybrids. There are plenty of there's colubrid hybrids that people make, there's boa hybrids that people make, there's tortoise hybrids, which I do have tortoises as well, and so that I am interested in that. Tortoise breeding is a whole other thing that I did accidentally last year and got that out of my system. Never again. Maybe never again. Probably will do it again. But yeah, so if somebody wants to do this, then yeah, like I said, you need to have, but I would hope that it comes from a place of like, I didn't get Angolan pythons to make hybrids. I didn't get Walma pythons to make hybrids. I got them because I wanted to work with those species, and of course I'm gonna, I'm gonna use my Woma female to make more Woma pythons, and it just kind of was like, it's just a fun little side thing to do. I feel like I don't think anybody has a collection that's like dedicated for hybrid making, and that's like their main goal, and they only make hybrids and stuff. So anybody that wants to do it is like, okay, well, I mean, it's the same advice for just breeding ball pythons in general, is don't think that you're not going to get rich doing it. You're not going to get, nothing's going to happen overnight. Right. And it's like, it's just thrilling, right? To, like I was talking about with that, that snake doesn't even have a Latin name, and it's like to see that thing crawl out of an egg, and it's like, holy crap, man, this is real. This is like, that's what I get out of the hybrid stuff. And then sure, it's nice that I don't have to sit on them very long, and they sell and I can make more. But it's like, so yeah, anybody that wants to get into it should. That's you need multiple different species of pythons, but leading up to that time when you have adult snakes of different species that you can breed together, the journey to get to that spot of like, you have to, there's a tremendous amount of knowledge that you have to collect to learn how to keep all these different, obviously, like my green tree pythons, I'm not keeping the same as I keep my ball pythons. So again, that's part of the allure for me, was just it being interested in all these other species, learning how to take care of all these other species, learning how to breed these species like properly, the pure versions of these species individually. And then from there, let's have some fun, see what kind of hybrid stuff we can make. Right.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. That was a great answer too, by the way. Oh, thanks. Well, bro, it's getting we at almost 2 hours, bro. Like time.
Yeah, I know. I talk a lot.
Oh no, it's been fun, man. It's been a real good conversation, man. And we touched on a lot of different stuff. And sure, I definitely didn't wake up today expecting to have the alien conversation. So that was super cool, man.
Hey, if we want to do a whole show on aliens, I'm
we might have to launch a whole alien show and just have at it.
All right, I'll be your co-host, man. I got this new microphone, and we're good to go.
That'll be cool, man. Because yeah, that stuff is super interesting to me. Like I said, it's almost like being in the MCU a little bit, bro. So I would definitely be down to do something like that. But
there's a lot of knowledge up here about that too.
I appreciate you coming on tonight. It's been a ton of fun. Before we get out of here, definitely let everybody know where they can follow you.
So mostly just active these days on Instagram. Obviously, for stuff for sale, Morph Market, just Peter Williams Reptiles on Morph Market, and also just Peter Williams Reptiles on Instagram. I still, you can also find me on Facebook, whatever, but I'm slowly decreasing the Facebook activity. But yeah, if somebody wants to get in touch with me or see what I'm doing or see what I have for sale or all that, then yeah, those are the two main places, the old Morph Market and the Instagram. So
nice, man. Great episode. Big shout out to everybody who been in the live chats tonight. I see the live chat was going crazy, man. So definitely appreciate y'all tapping in, showing support. Big shout out to the audio only gang. Big shout out to the YouTube replay gang. Anybody listen to this on the replay, definitely drop a comment. Let us know you were here. Hashtag replay gang. That's gonna do it for tonight, bro. Again, I really appreciate it. But until then, man, for Clutch Conversations, I'm Mike. This is Peter Williams Reptiles. The lovely lady behind the scenes is the car. Thank y'all for coming out. Be blessed. Peace.